Okay, it's 7:01 PM, and I'm calling the January 7th, 2025 Hamilton Planning Board to order. The meeting is being recorded by HW Cam and eventually should be available to the public on YouTube. So at this point, I will call roll. So when you call your name, would you please indicate that you're present? Pat Norton?
Present.
Jonathan Poor?
Jonathan Poor, present.
Emil Dahlquist?
Emil Dahlquist, present.
Beth Herr?
Present.
Darcy Dale?
Darcy Dale, present.
Matt Hamel?
Present.
Jeff Austin?
Jeff Austin, present.
And Marnie Crouch, present. And I note for the record, Bill Wheaton is not present, but I didn't hear that he was not going to attend the meeting, so maybe he's just running a little late. So the first item on our agenda is a review and vote on the draft minutes from November 26th, 2024. Mark did go through the minutes, and I also went through them and found just one or two very, very minor errors. So unless anyone else has any comments or edits with respect to the minutes,
I'll make a motion.
you can make a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes for November 26, 2024.
Second.
Great.
One discussion.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
There is on the bottom of page 1 of 2, and third line up from the bottom, PVC scope for util. Minor thing, but it should be FBC.
Oh, FBC, I think I,
Minor,
yeah, I think I missed that one.
yeah.
Or Mark, I sent you my Word document. It had revision 1 in parentheses.
Yes.
So if you would be so kind as to make that one edit, then they're ready to go. I don't have to do anything with them.
Sure.
So that was the fourth line up from the bottom toward the right side of the page.
And what was the change?
The initials should be FBC instead of PVC. Yeah,
Okay, the next item on the agenda
we'll
is...
get a vote on that.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to do that. So when I call your name, would you indicate your assent to the approval of the minutes? Pat Norton,
Pat Norton, aye.
Jonathan Poor,
Jonathan Poor, aye.
Emil Dahlquist,
Emil Dahlquist, aye.
Beth Herr,
Aye.
Darcy Dale,
Darcy Dale, aye.
and Marnie Crouch, aye. So the next item on our agenda is a final vote on the memorandum to the Select Board that I prepared with respect to the Groundwater Protection Overlay District. So this memorandum was sent to Town Council Robin Stein. She did suggest that we document for the file the reasons for the change to the Groundwater Protection Overlay District, and I did do that. I added one other observation with respect to that, in addition to a concern about the septic seepage if there was more than one dwelling unit per 80,000 square feet. And that was consistency with the RA district. So unless anyone else has any further comments, I did change the date on the memo to January 8th, and I will send it to the Select Board tomorrow morning.
I have a quick comment.
Sure.
It doesn't necessarily, I don't think have to go in the memo, but a bit of sort of support for this, should it be challenged, would be for somebody to see if they could find the pre-May 1990 zoning bylaw, in which case it should have the correct wording in it.
Right.
Anything pre-May 1990.
Yeah, I got the bylaws from 2012, and it had, the language we're correcting. But to find pre-1990, I think we would have to designate someone to go to the town hall and dig through the records to try and find that.
And the only purpose of that would be if it was challenged.
Right, and you can attest that it was formally the way it will be if it's approved at town meeting, the way the planning board is suggesting.
Well, I can only attest secondhand. I was promised the document, it wasn't found, and then he passed, so
But you've heard.
I've heard
It's hearsay.
from the
but-
horse's mouth,
But
yes.
this is not a court of law, so we're going to accept your hearsay. And if it's challenged, there will be someone designated to ascertain the truth of the assertion.
Okay.
Okay, so I think probably, unless there's further discussion, I'll entertain a motion to send this memorandum as it exists now, and you should have gotten a copy of it in your package from Mark. They're very minor.
Shall I make a motion?
Right,
I
sure.
move that we send the GPOD as written to the select board. Is that?
Yes, so what happens is the memorandum is transmitted to the select board for their consideration. They turn around it and send it back to us.
We do the public
And then
hearing.
we have the public hearing.
And then it goes to ATM.
And then it goes to the annual town meeting, and the town votes to accept it or reject it. So I have a motion.
Second.
Yes, so when I call your name, would you please indicate your assent? Pat Norton,
Aye.
Jonathan Poor,
Jonathan Poor, aye.
Emil Dahlquist,
Emil Dahlquist, aye.
Beth Herr,
Aye.
Darcy Dale,
Darcy Dale, aye.
and Marnie Crouch, aye. Thank you all for that. We're moving along. And now to, I think, really the heart of our discussions. We have two bylaws, Section 3.0 and then 10.6 to consider. And obviously, the bylaw provision dealing with accessory dwelling units is,
Speak into the mics. Speak into
Oh,
the
they
mics.
want us to speak into the mics, do they?
sorry. The accessory dwelling units is in a sense the most complicated because of the other provisions of the accessory dwelling unit bylaw, as well as the table of use regulations, which in the version of the bylaw that appears on the town website is corrupted. So we have to, I asked Mark to give you all a copy of the correct 2016 version of the table of use regulations. Is that in the packet?
It should be, yeah.
It is.
Section 3.0 regulations.
Yeah, we can't hear him.
They still can't hear it.
You can't hear it?
Yeah, we can't hear Mark when he's responding. We
Oh,
couldn't hear.
Sorry. Yes,
That's
it
fine.
should be in your packet under section 3.0 regulations. If you don't have it, I have extra copies.
Right, so when I looked at the section 10.6, there was a reference to the table of use regulations that made absolutely no sense. And then together with the errors that our building commissioner, Rich Maloney, found, and our effort to find other scrivener's errors, we really dug deep, and we found, with the help of Corinne Kale, and obviously Mark was working on this, we found the 2012 version of the bylaw and then the 2016 version of the bylaw. The 2016 version of the bylaw has been amended a couple of times. The inclusionary housing provisions was amended in 2018, and then the accessory apartment provision was also amended, and that might have been 2018. I might have my dates wrong, but both of those sections were amended after 2016. But the table of use regulations that you now have in front of you is correct. And so in talking about ADUs, we have to also look at Section E of the Table of Use Regulations that's captioned accessory, because we may have to amend that as well. Because the draft that Mark and I worked on, we eliminated Section 3.7, which is now incorporated into just 3.6. But that seemed to be unnecessary. I mean, accessory or ADUs on large lots, what's the difference? It's any lot. It would just seem redundant. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Rich, you're saying that Section 3.4, conversion for temporary additional living areas, is a provision that has never been used?
Not as long as I've been here. And it doesn't make any sense. Anybody that's come in and talked to us about a zoning opinion, we just steer them towards the other one. Either way, you have to get a special permit. And then it's one of those provisions that, once that person has moved on, you're supposed to remove the kitchen. Nobody does that. So it's just maybe it was good at the time, it was adopted, but it's really useless. Nobody uses it. And now that the ADUs are by right, it'll never get used. It's just a waste of ink. I would just delete that section.
Right, exactly.
Nobody use it.
Right, so I have no problem with that. Is there any discussion with respect to that? I would imagine that most people, when they put in kind of a temporary apartment, have no clue that there's a bylaw out there that might affect their ability to do that. And I can't imagine why anyone would say no. And then once it's in, and it's unlikely to ever be removed. And it just is ink, as you say, for the sake of ink. So I
Excuse me,
think
Marnie,
that,
is it possible for us to back out for a minute and sort of look at this task a little bit more globally and then come back in on the details for just a moment?
well, that's fine, but I'd like to look globally at Section 3 as opposed to the entire bylaw.
No,
because-
just Section 3.
Okay, fine.
So, a couple of big picture observations or opinions. The change in the ADU bylaw could potentially have a greater impact visually and planning-wise on Hamilton than 3A and form-based code and any of those other things combined. So it's a big deal. And we can do it well, or we could do it less well. And then in addition to that, since it's generally by right, it really comes back around to a little bit more creative and collaborative process to achieve success. And there's, for me, an odd parallel between Chapter 40C, the establishment of historic districts, and this bylaw. In Chapter 40C, yes, you can deny a permit, but you don't have much basis to do it on. And really what your mission is for success is a collaboration with the applicants to manage to success. And the first step in that is education. And the first step in education is often guidelines that are visual, and then a pre-application conference. So you've got really fairly detailed guidelines, which are non-jurisdictional but clear and educational. And then you've got those to reference in a pre-application conference. And I ran the Gloucester Historic District Commission for nearly 20 years, and that was the process that we used. And it was a very complex district to manage with a lot of very strong development pressure from a lot of different directions. And that combination of approaches I thought was very helpful when you had a bylaw, 40C, which has no teeth in it. So anyway, I'm just sort of backing out and wondering if we thought of this as fixing the existing bylaw, tuning it up, tailoring it to what the state says, and then in close sort of partnership with it, creating a set of visually understandable guidelines, and then a really proactive pre-application interview or conference process, that there might be a more collaborative way to success here, that a bylaw alone is going to have a hard time achieving.
Right.
That's just there's just sort of a big picture.
No, and
Comment.
I actually agree with you about the guidelines. They would obviously not be mandatory. I mean, the regulations, the
Right.
proposed
But
regulations.
they're educational.
Yes,
They're
exactly.
educational. So
And-
so that the applicant knows what's going to be talked about when they show up at the hearing.
Right,
And it
but the other-
avoids,
the
it
other-
avoids a situation where an architect has, expended thousands of dollars on a drawing that's done, that an applicant doesn't want to redo, and it might not be in alignment with what the priorities are of the purpose of the bylaw.
Well, to me,
Can I say something?
well, can I just
Would you
make a
mind that?
point, though? What he's saying is that,
That you cannot create a regulation for the ADUs that you don't have for the single-family home that
Right.
it's sitting on.
I understand.
So you don't regulate, your single-family homes in town aren't on the site plan, there's no pre-review. You
Understood.
don't have to go to the zoning board.
Yep.
So you can't create something for the ADU that you don't for the single families.
Understood.
All right, so you
Right.
have to go back and
Totally understood.
every house would have to go through site plan if you want the ADUs to go through site.
No, not every ADU. It would be, what I'm doing is I'm getting at the ones that are unusual that require site, like a
Right.
site
That-
plan review. That's what I'm assuming.
yes.
Sorry, I jumped
So
ahead.
let me make 2 points. One is that the statute itself permits site plan review.
Yes.
However, it's almost unheard of to have site plan review for a single-family house. But
Right.
I think we can craft site plan review for specific circumstances.
Yes.
Limited.
Yes.
But in terms of, we have to differentiate voluntary guidelines and regulations.
Absolutely.
So the guidelines would not in any way, shape, or form be mandatory. But let's take a step back here. ADUs have the potential to be of enormous benefit, to young families, to people who are on fixed incomes and have a large house and want to move to a smaller property on the same site. There are enormous benefits to this. And so to make it acceptable to the community and not have abutters tearing their hair out because someone's, building something that's visually unattractive or materials that are antithetical to any other building in the neighborhood, to have these guidelines can actually promote, as Jonathan says, more of a collaborative approach rather than have people running to the ZBA because this ADU is just, going to be an eyesore in the neighborhood. So these
The education
guidelines are-
tends to be more proactive. An example of that is Boston has a very extensive document. I don't think it's a great document, but it's really comprehensive. You can find it online. And what it is it's a very detailed primer on what's an ADU, what are all the different ways you can apply it in all the situations in Boston. It's really comprehensive. I don't necessarily agree that it has really a specific application in Hamilton, but the idea that they're promoting it, demystifying it, and giving people the tools to solve the problems, I think is great. And I think we could use that kind of thinking in a smaller scale here.
Right. Because
And
I
so
think
that's not, that Boston guideline is not jurisdictional, and it starts right out saying it's just educational, it's
just
helping people.
educational, yeah. It's,
So-
we're not going to be able to stop people from building ADUs.
No,
What
and
we
that's
would
the
like to
idea, is
do-
they're all coming, but you want to,
Encourage
you
them.
want to help them to success.
Encourage them to fit within the community and not garner a lot of antipathy from people adjacent houses.
So that's my point here, but in thinking that way, it could temper how you craft the bylaw so that you're not struggling to make it restrictive when it shouldn't be restrictive. Instead, it's a carrot instead of a stick is what I'm getting
Oh,
at.
absolutely.
That's
And-
what I'm
and
getting
that's-
at. And that's why I wanted to
I
bring it
think
up
you can
now
understand that.
before diving into the weeds on what's in the document.
Right.
So if the board embraces that, then we sort of think of it as a package rather than you build the bylaw, hope for the best, and then Band-Aid it with some guidelines.
Well, I think here, when I, stepped back from this draft and really started thinking about what we need to do, we need to think step by step. I'm a homeowner. I want to build an ADU. What do I do first? Do I go to the planning department or the building department and I get a form? Okay, and I have to fill out the form. That's probably the first step. So when you go to get the form, you get the guidelines.
Exactly.
And then, you talked about a pre-application conference, but a conference, because part of the issue, especially.
That would be more if there's site plan review.
Yeah, but even so, even just talking to people, because you don't want to spend money on an ADU if you don't have the septic capacity for it.
Right, yes.
You don't want to break ground.
It gives you the
until
checklist.
know.
It gives you the checklist so that you.
You know what you
yeah.
can do and whether it's
The great thing
feasible.
about the Boston guidelines is it literally says step 1, step 2, step 3, and it goes through a checklist. And it's, like I say, it's a very accessible document. It's not written in design jargon. It's written for the homeowner, specifically for the homeowner, as an accessible guideline for the entire process, from how to begin to think about it to how to finish it out and get your certificate of
Right,
occupancy.
and this is important because, as you said at the last meeting, it's highly unlikely that people are going to construct ADUs from scratch. They're probably going to buy some type of prefabricated building and put it on a
It
foundation.
depends site by site. Over the years, I've done both.
Well, I mean, it may be eventually, but given today's market,
Money.
I don't
But
know if you're
often-
going to
often
put an
there's elements on a buil-
$800,000, 900 square foot ADU.
Often there's elements in a building, either in accessory buildings or in unused square footage in a building that you can adjust and
Right,
adapt.
I mean.
And the Boston document covers all of those permutations.
Yeah, we should get that ASAP.
It's online. I can send a
We
link
got a
to it.
copy in our office.
Okay.
Oh, you do, good. Yeah, so with that said, I don't know if you all have had an opportunity to look through this. I think, Rich, your big concern is you are leery of site plan review. So, and.
All I'm
and-
saying is that the state regulations say that you can't make it any more difficult. You can't create something in your bylaw that you don't have for the house that it's going on the lot. So, once again, if the house is not on the site plan or single families, then the ADUs can't be.
Well, I did not read the statute that way.
I got it right here, so it's the
I
last,
I
second
have
last
it right
page.
here as well. And I think that the reason why you could craft very limited circumstances where there is site plan review, one, it is permissible, and two, on very small lots. Because I think that's where, there's the potential for real problems.
Yeah, again, unless it applies to the single-family home, it can't apply to the ADU by right. I mean, you have to understand that, that's the basic premise. The state is saying, you can't make these ADUs more difficult than the house to build. So on small lots, what's gonna control the ADU is the septic system and the setbacks, like every small lot. The dimensional requirements are gonna control what gets built on your lot. Get a small lot, might not be able to fit an ADU. That's all there is to it. You have the building lot coverage provision is 25%. We have people that have a difficult time in the, off the square area with those small lots when they wanna do additions because of the lot coverage provision. So I think small lots kind of take just the basic zoning regulations, dimensional regulations, take care of that. Again, you gotta remember, that's the baseline. The state does not want barriers to the ADUs. That's the number
well,
one thing you gotta remember, so,
And Rich, I really do appreciate your saying that. But if the statute specifically references site plan review, it must be for a reason. So,
if you wanted to say, okay, every property in town is on the site plan review, then the ADUs can be on the site plan review. That's an overall, you're looking at the overall thing, then change the whole bylaw. But that's section, the state regs.
Well, it is conceivable to me.
Section, let's see, it's on the second to last page, site
I
plan, there's a
have it.
notation. Any requirement of the site plan review concerning procedural, protected use ADUs that is more restrictive than those applied to the principal dwelling. So-
This is the proposed regulation, so this is not cast in concrete yet, and I understand that.
This is under the provision about, the following restriction regulation shall be considered unreasonable.
Right, this is the draft regulation.
Steve.
The final, the public hearing on this regulation is tomorrow. So that's the issue.
I wanted just to mention that I agree with some of the guideline information Jonathan was describing, and Richard and Mary Ellen have a lot of really awesome, like, helpful guides, whether or not you want to put up a shed or whatever else on the building department page, and that could be a helpful link that gets added, but I'm not sure it belongs in the bylaw itself. Like, we have,
Oh, it
Bylaw
wouldn't be in the
contest-
bylaw.
It can't be in the bylaw.
okay,
It-
I didn't know
no,
you
no,
were recommending us,
cannot
like,
be in the
Oh,
bylaw.
no,
add stuff to the
But
bylaw, but.
what you would do is you would be thinking about the guideline as you develop the bylaw, so that
Got
you
you.
understand how they marry together.
Okay.
But it's non-jurisdictional, it's informational, it's educational, that's all it is. It's a
We-
help.
So
Yeah,
it's
we
a
found
guide-
everything we could, and we got a whole stack of different ADU stuff. We have the Boston
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. So you'd-
Stuff that, just informational stuff for people to ask. I mean, I got a permit on my desk. The guy is waiting for February 2nd. My thing is, I have to issue permits February 2nd, and generally, we don't have a bylaw. So I am trying to, not legally, I'm telling people that, here's our special permit regulations, even though they don't really have to comply with them. You know what I mean? It's kind of, I'm in a tough position right now in both communities, because we do not have I do Hamilton and Wenham, we do not have a by right bylaw in either community that I've been screaming about since, last summer. So, it's kind of a tough thing, and I'm just kind of like trying to push, I live in Georgetown, we passed a bylaw, I don't agree with everything in it, there's some good stuff in there. Like, I like the fact that the main entry shouldn't be seen on an ADU, that entry. And I like the fact that you guys are saying no separate utilities. Georgetown approved separate utilities, so now, if you look at it from the street, you're gonna see 2 meters, 2 doors. It just doesn't look good, I agree. It could ruin neighborhoods. I'm not sure how many people are gonna build an ADU standalone, because the cost is unbelievable right now. The construction costs are $400 to $500 a square foot, so I'm not sure somebody's gonna build one to make money, you never will. If you have parents that have money and they wanna downsize, that's the freestanding ones you're gonna get. But yeah, I agree, I want it to blend into my neighborhood, I'm not sure the way our bylaw passed in Georgetown, that's gonna, I don't like all the details of it. I know Middleton passed one, Georgetown passed one. I forget which town it is, but if you want a garage with the ADU, the garage requires a special permit, requires more oversight.
So that's where, again, I think education is really great. And if the education ideally comes up before they actually come in with the drawings and looking for the application, it's when they're thinking about it. Do they have easy access to that educational document that guides them? And often it's for their own benefit. What I enjoyed about that process on the Historic District Commission is often we'd work together to figure out ways for the applicant to save money, save effort, save time, get where they needed to go, but it was a little bit more collaborative. And again, I use the example because Chapter 40C has really no teeth in it. It's very subjective. Yet you can, when you use that technique of carrot, I feel you can get to good places, rather than treating 40C is not a stick, it's a carrot. So.
Yeah, and me and Mark, we met today for a couple hours, went over everything and talked, and I just wanted to put something in there saying that, when you're, an ADU in the historic district has to comply with the HDC regulations and review, so.
So we have to add that.
I just thought it'd be a good, in the general requirements, when you get the bylaw ironed out, you know, just something in there.
So what you're saying is the only time we could have site plan review if there was a second ADU on the property? A second ADU?
If that's what you want to do on a second ADU, or because you allow single-family homes in the business district, you could, I believe you could require site plan review in the business district. Because it's a commercial zone, but you do allow single-family homes. So you could have an instance where you have two uses, mixed use on a lot, they want to add an ADU.
Okay, so those are two circumstances.
Or you require the whole town to go on the site plan review.
Well, given that there's not that much land left in Hamilton, it might not be the worst idea in the world, you know, because if we had site plan review
Yeah,
for the
you said that
houses
they're
on
not,
Bridge
they're not
Street.
quite done on those, and we can get town council to comment on that particular issue. Robin drafted we have just a rough draft for Wenham that we're reviewing that Robin,
And did she have what were the circumstances for her, in Wenham, where there was site plan review?
there isn't on the ADU draft. The bylaw she drafted is pretty basic.
You mentioned it could be a site plan, an attached garage might trigger a site plan requirement or not?
Special permit.
Special permit.
Yeah, so that was, I think it was Middleton or Georgetown, and they limited the 2 stories. The other thing is that accessory structures in Wenham have to be 20 feet from the property, where the primary structures are 15 feet from the side property lines. So I just wanna, that's one of the things, is we need to clarify that, whether you're gonna apply the primary structure setback 15 feet or the accessory structure setback to the side lot line. Just something to think about.
I mean, a lot of municipalities have a smaller setback to the side lot line than for accessory structures than principal structures. I don't know, I haven't looked at what Hamilton has.
Hamilton is 20 feet for accessory structures. You get one, I think you get one shed, you know, the exemption from the building code is 120 square feet.
Yeah.
One shed can be 5 feet from the
Yes.
property line, side and rear, you still have to maintain the front setback. But in Hamilton, so all other accessory structures, detached accessory structures from the house have to be 20 feet. Unless it's a barn with animals, and it has to be 50 feet from all property lines.
So some of the puzzles, for example, if you think of like kind of worst case scenario, let's say you have a small lot and it has 3 frontages, right? That
Yeah.
occurs. And then the one side or rear, whichever you call the 4th line, is basically an alley, no place to put anything. Now you're in one of the frontages with your ADU.
The big non-conforming mess, so, yeah, then, and then the state regs further go on to say that if you have, if you require zoning relief, of any form of zoning relief, it's gotta be in the form of a finding for the ADU, it can't be a special permit, for the by right ones.
So, but if it was a detached, say the 3 frontage example, and it's a detached building, I guess what you're saying is if the basic bylaw says you couldn't put an addition on that house in any of those 3 frontages because you'd break the setbacks, the same applies for the ADU. But if you're within the setbacks, it can go on the face of one of those frontages as a snout, basically, either attached or detached.
It still would need zoning relief. So the thing is that you're not exempt from zoning dimensional requirements.
Right.
They have to be reasonable. So if you can use the zoning setbacks you have now, and in that case, there's some places with corner lots, or maybe there's a couple in town with, you might have 3 frontages, so they would need zoning relief. Form of a finding, though, you can't require a special permit.
So there's no limit now on how many accessory buildings you have on your lot. There's that building coverage requirement.
Lot coverage,
Lot
that's it,
coverage,
yeah,
yeah.
so.
So you could have like a guest house and a garage and a house. If you're under that threshold, you're okay.
Yep, yeah. There's many places in town with, multiple barns and
Yep.
garages, house, secondary residences that predate zoning.
Sure.
I will tell you, there is a property in Danvers with 4 frontages. The Cumberland Farms on 114. So that is in the state highway layout. So it has Route 1, 114, and the on-ramp, so it's completely surrounded by 4 street frontages. Kind of a bizarre, when you think about it, you think, could that ever happen? Yes.
Well, I know the three frontages happens
Yep.
right downtown here,
Yep.
so.
All right, did anybody else have any further comments with respect to this? Because I think that what I'm thinking is we need a plan.
Yes.
And here's the plan. I think that,
You guys need me anymore?
pardon, we need you a lot, because you came in here and you didn't like what we did, so now I'm turning it to you. I think that,
Not that I didn't like what you did, it just needs to be
well, it was,
refined.
you have to get something on paper to talk about.
Yeah,
You can't talk about things in the abstract. You have to have it on paper.
Amen.
So if there are no further comments about this, what I'm suggesting is that you and Mark redo this, and I will, if the board consents, I will also take part in this facilitating getting something really in good shape within a week, getting it to Robin Stein before our next meeting. And our next meeting is on January 21st. But for us to get this ADU bylaw in final shape so we can do our memorandum to the select board, so the select board can send it back to us, so we can have our public hearing, and this can get on the warrant, all of this has to be done by January 29th. So I don't think we have the luxury of having another draft come back to us on the 21st, then having the bylaw go to Robin Stein for her review. We just run out of time. So I think we have to have a lot more certainty by the 21st as to what we're doing and have.
Could you try again?
She's spying.
Me and him can hammer this out in the next 2 days, if he's.
Yeah,
in-
and and I'm happy to be involved because I'm a style maven, if nothing else. So, and then I'd like to get it to Robin. Then it can come back to us, the board itself, on the, I believe it's the 21st. Where's my schedule here? On the 21st. And then the board itself can review the work product, Robin's comments, we finalize it all and or get it close to final on the 21st, subject to any further edits, comments, whatever. I know Mark had some comments that were good, but let's just, I'm gonna back up now, though, so the board is clear. So, I'm homeowner. I want to put an ADU on my property. I go to your office, and I get a form, and I get all the guidelines. And then what? You review the form,
You sit down with the building inspector, that's what everybody does. So
They
people
sit
come
down
in,
with
say,
you.
this is what I want to do. I say, come on in, we sit down, say, these are the zoning regulations, this is what we're looking for.
setbacks, yeah.
Site plan, building plans, the level changes with whatever you want to do, whether it's a simple bathroom renovation, an addition, ADU, whether you got to go to the zoning board of appeals, we help people with that process,
Well, we're talking about ADUs.
I know, I'm just saying
Yeah.
what we do every day.
Yeah, yeah.
Is people come into us every day, call us every day, and this is what we do every day, is help people out through the building and zoning process. That's what we get paid to do, that's what we do. So when I see all this stuff, you don't need to get all this stuff in there about the steps and everything. You need a permit, by right ADU, here are our regs, and then the guidelines, like what the town would like to see, But you put the things in there that you can control. Height of the building, maximum square footage. Your zoning regs are gonna take care of, just your regular zoning regs are gonna take care of the small lots all by themselves.
What about someone who wants to put an ADU too close to the wetland or on a steep slope?
Again,
and
they have to comply with Mass General laws
Stormwater
regarding
manage-
septic and wetlands.
And stormwater management.
Yes.
We don't do stormwater management on the existing single-family lots.
Even if it's
Well,
over a certain.
you do
distance.
now.
If you're in the wet, if you
You do
disturb,
now.
if you disturb so much land, you do.
Well, and also if you're building on a steep slope. I mean, we have a new stormwater management general bylaw and regulations. So, for example, if you wanted to build those houses on Bridge Street again today, you'd be before the planning board with a stormwater management permit application, which I hope we get for the remainder of the lots, because they're as steep as the existing ones. But, so there's the potential that someone could want to put, or the only place they could put a detached ADU would be on a slope that might require a stormwater management permit or a waiver of the stormwater management permit. So, those are the things that I'm concerned about. And so how, so the form would have a checklist. Have you satisfied all the provisions of this 3.6? That's what all this stuff. And you would be looking that it's not 905 square feet. And we have to define gross square footage in relation to what the executive office, how it wants to define it and how the building code defines it. So
Well, I think we have to adopt, just for the ADUs, you should just adopt all their definitions right out of their regs. Just adopt their definitions. You can either do it, I talked to Mark about this, they may not mesh with everything you have in your bylaw, but you could go to definitions under ADU
and it's
and put,
just
and just
for,
go right out of the state regs, put them all in there. These definitions apply to ADUs, and then you don't really have to, you could, but look at your definitions, see how they mesh with the ones for the state is saying for the AD, those are specific for the ADU, so
okay,
you don't get in trouble.
okay. So,
May not like some of the definitions that apply, maybe don't want them to apply to the rest of the zoning bylaw.
right, and that might be the case, because there were kind of issues with the executive office's definition, right?
But they're only, right, they're written to promote by right housing. They just
Right.
want to create housing, and they're slowly going to erase local zoning to get it.
Right,
So again, to tie a ribbon around what my point was, is I think that we could streamline the ADU bylaw. We don't need to wrestle with it as much, and get it on the books, get it in your hands, and then when we can take a breath, see if we can promote some type of easy, accessible, educational carrot that helps people toward doing the right thing. And it gives the why. It's not just like, you must do this, but if you do this, it's gonna enhance your own property value. It's
Right.
that kind of thing. So
Right.
it's gotta be for their benefit. They've gotta, just like your attitude, it sounds like in the office, is how may we help you?
Right.
That's
And Rich
that's
said
gotta be
he
the
has
tone
the-
of the
Yeah,
of the
that's what they're
guidelines.
for, so.
he
How may
has
we
the
help you?
Boston guidelines and whatnot, so,
But the Boston guidelines are not well-tailored to this town, so you could look at them for form and framework, but they're city guidelines,
right,
so.
Well, I mean, that's an undertaking we could consider, is to craft some guidelines just for this ADU.
That's what I'm suggesting.
I would say the
Yeah.
architectural styles that are in their handout aren't the town ones, you know what I mean?
No,
more-
they're city, it's a city-oriented. It's a great framework and organization, but it's for a city. And you could take that idea and the tone of it and adapt it to Hamilton in a much more compact form, in my opinion. So
Well,
that's all.
even the historical, district guidelines might be
Those are
something
verbal,
you
they're not
could-
they're not visual.
Oh, they're not
They're
visual?
not visual. So it needs to be a combination of words and pictures. It needs to be very simple and accessible.
You have a really good idea of how to do that, so, you just,
Sounds like a volunteer.
Let's do it.
I think you dug a hole there, Jonathan,
So-
and you're gonna have to fill
In
it
any
up
event,
at
but
some
that's,
point.
but the point here is that we've got to race against
Want
the
me to
clock.
make a
to get-
motion, Marty?
We've got to race against the clock to get this bylaw in place.
It's a race against the clock, so I think that, given your expertise with this, and this is a dramatic change, if you will, in the table of use regulations, which empowered the ZBA to deal with quote-unquote accessory apartments. So we're not just looking at 3.6, we have to look at the table of use regulations. And then if we delete 3.4, the conversion for temporary additional living area, then the numbering will also change. It won't be 3.6 anymore, it'll be 3.5.
Yeah, you can just, 3.4 saved for future reference
Or
or something.
whatever, that's
without
fine.
renumbering everything.
Right. So anyhow, I think that if you and Mark have had good conversations and you understand, the urgency of the January 29th date, then we need to think about getting this to Robin sooner rather than later. So if you have something in the next couple of days, I'll be happy to look at it, and then we can go from there. And Robin, I know, she's offered to help us with this. And I think didn't you have an issue about, we had an issue about, and you raised it too, I'm drawing a blank on this.
On the ADUs.
Yeah, on ADUs.
Yeah,
A lot of issues.
Yeah.
I spoke to her over the phone, and this is a tricky process because we don't have final state regulations. They're only in draft form. They won't be final until the 2nd, which coincidentally is the date that the law goes into effect. So it puts towns in a position,
Planning.
an impossible position where we can't meet that deadline without not knowing what the regulations are. So, I did ask her some questions. The site plan review was one I asked her directly, can we permit it even though we don't for ADUs? And she didn't want to answer that until the regulations are final. I agree with Rick that there is language in the draft regulations that would seem to say that you can't do that.
But the
when we-
statute actually says you can, so
Exactly,
there's-
and they really
there's
emphasize that.
ambiguity there, so,
So,
this is, the Commonwealth, I think, sometimes digs a hole too. They create these
Mandates.
mandates, if you will, and it just, it backfires. Because conceivably, there's a big difference between building a single-family house on a lot and then and we're really talking about detached ADUs, not the ones, that are in a house or right attached to it, the detached one. You're putting another building there. And on a lot that's, say, if it's 20,000 square feet in the R1A district, well, you're adding another unit there. It's not like you're starting from scratch and building a single-family house. You're building an accessory dwelling unit on a lot that's the same size as the single-family house. That's different. I mean, you could argue that site plan review is applicable because you're exceeding, the amount of the square footage applicable to the single-family house. 40,000 square feet, one house. Now you're adding another one. So you could have site plan review, in my view, you could make the argument, at any rate, that site plan review was warranted for detached accessory dwelling units.
Yeah, but it's non-denial, so it's.
And- but see, site
If they
plan
meet all the
review-
setbacks, what are you gaining on the site plan review?
Well, I'm just saying, but site plan review
what hap-
is not discretionary. So you couldn't have a type of review for ADUs that was discretionary. But site plan review is, in many respects, advisory. So I just throw that out.
That goes right back to my point about the collaborative approach. If you can get the conversation going early on and you've got a review process, you can't do it every time, but many times you can bring people around to do something that's better for them and better for the town.
Yeah,
But there has to be a dialogue early on.
right.
Yeah, I would say, people that can afford to build a detached ADU in today's construction market are probably gonna build something pretty nice.
Yeah.
There's one on Essex Street that's on my desk already, he is waiting for February 2nd. And he's going above an existing beautiful, it's on 10 acres or something, nobody's ever gonna see it. But
So
we
often the
sat
issue
down.
isn't the quality of construction, its position in relationship to the road and the neighborhood.
Yeah,
That's
and
usually
this-
the issue.
the first one we're gonna issue by right is, nobody will ever see it.
Right. That's the easy stuff. The hard stuff is when you get to the tighter lots.
Yep.
You know, like a worst-case scenario is you have, multiple frontages and somebody can't afford an ADU, so they buy an oversized shed and they plunk it in the
And
front
this-
yard.
This neighborhood all the way over to Asbury Street is the tough one. And
Yes.
Right. What would your answer be to a GPOD site, 1 acre lot? They want to put an accessory unit up.
Oh, it's the GPOD, that's right. Yeah.
And yet, because it's in a GPOD, it's under a GPOD overlay mandate, essentially saying you need 80,000 square feet.
Yeah,
How do they deal with that situation?
yeah, they may not be able to do it.
So that's not as of right, then. It's overruled by the GPOD.
That's right. It's, again, you can't change the Board of Health regulations. You can't change the wetland regulations and the groundwater protection district. That's something you just can't override.
Yeah.
So, like I said, and then you have the lot coverage provision. So some people just won't be able to do it.
Because I know when you start building up these overlay districts, you can only go so deep on these before you run into real problems with conflicts.
So, yeah.
Is any community
It's by right, but
has-
it's like you can build a single-family house anywhere in town, but you can't build it in the riverfront. You
Yeah,
can't build
right,
it in wetlands. If your ground doesn't perk, you don't get to build the house. So those regulations you can't override those regulations.
Yeah, right, right.
Well, it might be important to put that in the bylaw.
Absolutely, yes.
Because there's a lot of GPOD sites
Yeah.
here in town.
Yeah. So I think that it's important to just make that clear up front. And so we have a plan, let's stick to our plan, but there are these kind of loose ends.
You
these
could,
kind of
right,
qu-
we talked about that, it should be a footnote there that in the historic district, you have to
Historic
the
district,
Historic Commission rules,
GPOD, Board of Health.
GPOD. There could be those caveats right up at the beginning, and you can apply with Board of Health regulations and wetland regulations.
You
Do
know,
you need to amend, say, the bylaws for the GPOD bylaw to indicate, just to acknowledge accessory dwellings there? Or any of the others, like the historic district?
No.
So
They-
it'd all be handled under accessory
Yeah,
dwelling?
they have a footnote, they have something in the state regs that just says you have to comply with the HDC regulations in the community. I saw that.
Yeah.
so,
If we do work on guidelines, since that will not be part of the bylaw, that doesn't have the same deadline that we have with the bylaw in terms of getting it wrapped up. So if there are any guidelines, and I support that fully, having been part of that a lot, but because it's better to get information in advance of any activity rather than later, because people have a general understanding of what's expected. And I think everybody wants to sort of collaborate with the community, and so they're more apt to be persuaded to do it differently when they contact their designer if they are going to put up, a freestanding ADU. So it makes sense to do that. So I agree with Jonathan's recommendation on that. That really is it's a good idea, but it doesn't have to happen right away. I mean, it could follow, because it probably doesn't have to go to town meeting for
Yeah, the
approval.
sooner we get the bylaw in place, the better off.
Yeah.
Again, I'm trying to coerce
Yeah.
people into the regulations we have on hand, even
Yeah.
though they could fight that, but I'm just gonna say, well, these are the regs.
Yeah.
well, then the other thing that probably should be in this bylaw, though, is that if there's any dispute as to your determination with respect to the building permit, well, that's covered in 10.2, I think. any appeal from your decision goes to the
Zoning Board of Appeals.
ZBA. So in the 2016 Table of Use regulations, then, that has to be amended. So the accessory apartment 3.6, if we use that numbering, the ZBA has to be deleted, and that has to be a row of yeses, Ys. And
Well,
then,
I guess you would do, I guess you would put a line item in there, ADUs, so you could still have ADUs by special permit if, say, somebody wants a bigger one. Do you want to let that by special permit, or do you want to just say you'd have to get a variance?
well, yeah, see, the definition of ADU right now is 900 square feet.
Well, that's the limit, that's what the state's allowing by right. Your you can change that if you want by your
But you
community.
can't call it an ADU
That's a
then.
that's the, say they're saying 50% of the house.
Saying in two houses then.
50% of the square footage of the existing house, or 900 square feet, whichever is smaller, the state's saying that's what you have to adopt. You can go more.
Yeah, but,
Some community, I think Georgetown is, it's, a
but it doesn't
percentage of the
become an as of right, and it's
Yeah.
not an as of right, and it becomes a different name.
You know, actually, you would almost need two lines, then accessory dwelling units pursuant to 3.6 and accessory dwelling units that exceed,
or by special permit. So you get the by right ones that stick to the state regs, or you could say, well, you know, I got a house on 5 acres, I got a 5,000 square foot house on 5 acres, I want to do an ADU for my mom and dad. Maybe you have a sliding scale, and that's by special permit. Gets
yeah,
it-
that's almost a variance, isn't it? That's a variance
Well,
from the
it's-
underlying zoning. You're basically putting another house up.
Yeah, it's not an ADU, it's a house.
It's a house.
Yeah.
You just call it a
Some-
house.
I'm not saying it has to be a separate dwelling unit, but it could be in the house. I'm just saying.
Anyhow, that's something to work
That's something you
on.
guys gotta make a decision on.
Yeah,
I really don't care about that.
Well,
I'm just
no,
saying that
I'm just saying in
900
terms of
square
the-
feet for a lot of people is not a lot of room, so.
Right. So,
You could still leave ADUs in by special permit that exceed the by right ones, that's all.
yeah,
And you could fix a number on that, or you could say, you know what, 900 square feet is good enough for our town, so that's it. See you later, eliminate the special permit provision.
no, I get it. You could, you know, I see that because I think that would work.
What I would also foresee is a lot of places where they need the ADU, they've almost got the setbacks, but not quite. They have to break a foot into the setbacks or something like that, and then I guess it would be zoning board variance.
The variance, yeah,
Yeah.
or if the structure's non-conforming, then it's a finding.
Right. And that could happen a lot downtown here.
In this part of town, yes. It happens, yeah.
Yeah.
Every time somebody wants to do something in
Yeah,
addition.
it's all, everything's non-conforming.
Yeah.
Do you have the definition of gross square footage that the state uses for you?
It's in
with you?
the, they have a whole definition section, and that's why my recommendation is just to adopt all their definitions, and you could do it specific in your definition section, right, by right
Can you-
ADUs.
can
or
you read
ADUs
what
by
they
right,
have, though?
And just have all their state definitions underneath that.
Can you just read what they have there?
But it's like a 2-3 pages.
You're just asking for gross square
For
footage.
gross square footage, not all
Is
the
that one item?
definitions. Just
Oh,
one,
I'm sorry, the gross.
one
square foot.
definition. Yeah.
I thought you bought all the definitions.
Gross floor area?
Yeah.
The sum of the areas of all floors of the building, including basements, cellars, mezzanine, and intermediate floor tiers and penthouses, of headroom height, measured from the exterior faces of exterior walls, or from the center line of walls separating buildings, but excluding covered walkways, open roofed over areas, porches, and similar spaces.
Now, how are you going to squeeze that into a 900 square foot if you're counting all of those areas?
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
No, it does not include porches.
No, forget the porches,
But
basements,
basement, yeah.
attics,
Habitable, yeah, yeah. That's not much.
that eats up a lot of area. I mean, that tells you slab on grade, up on piers.
Well, they do say headroom, so you could do a crawl space, but they don't define headroom.
Well, we would use we use the building code,
Oh, okay.
so 6'8" is a habitable
Right.
headroom in a basement in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So you could do,
Anything less is a crawl space. yeah.
Is not considered habitable space.
so then you could get around that constraint. Just follow the building code.
You just can't be more restrictive than that.
Right.
You can change that if you want, it just has to be in the.
But that doesn't even comply with the state building code for
Yeah,
gross square footage.
currently your
That definition.
does not include unfinished basements and
Right.
attics.
Or garages, as I understand it.
Well, it doesn't say anything about the garage.
Yeah.
Because we had a special permit ADU on Woodland Mead that was pretty big when you looked at the whole big picture, at the front porch, back porch, garage. And I couldn't say yes or no whether that counted.
Yeah,
It wasn't very clear about the porches. And that was one of my things, saying that, that's one of the,
yeah.
you don't know you have a problem until you try to apply it.
No, exactly.
And I thought the gross square footage definition needed some work.
Yeah,
It looks like the state one isn't that good either.
no.
So if somebody did an ADU one year with a giant porch and then came back the next year and asked for a permit to enclose the porch, that never happens.
No, never.
I wonder how that would play with the state bylaw.
Yeah, the town would have to reject it if you knew, but you may not know.
Can an ADU get a variance, just the ADU itself?
You can always ask for variance. I know Hamilton doesn't like to give them, so. Yeah, you can ask for anything you want, whether you get it, that's a different.
Okay,
Good idea to leave the special permit process for anything exceeding the
yes,
state's minimum
yes, and that
requirements.
would be by the
That makes sense, yeah.
CBA
Yeah.
Yeah.
to do that. So I think we're good. Let's move on. And I'm going to take something out of order. We do want to talk about Section 10.6, site plan review, but I want to skip, since you're here, Rich, to your proposed revisions, okay? And I think I sent everyone a draft of a memorandum to the select board highlighting your proposed changes that Patrick
Yeah, they
provided.
really aren't changes, they're all errata.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the memorandum. I didn't do anything with respect to the map, because I thought the map, there's just the wrong map on the town's website, is that it?
Yes, it just needs to, we need to get the map
The correct map?
to somebody that's gonna edit it.
Yeah, so my understanding from Mark and Robin is that if the mistake is on the town webpage, you don't need to do any type of bylaw amendment to fix that. So I think your map question mark is okay. We don't need to worry about.
Yeah, we just need to get a new one printed with that, it's that block of land between 1A, the MBTA rail line, Cutler Road, and the Ipswich Town line. That big chunk of land got rezoned in 1999, but it never showed up on any zoning map, so.
Okay, so I addressed all of your issues in section 4, I believe.
The only one that's not a errata is the gross square footage definition.
Right. Well, was this errata? I think the elimination of the 50, that's,
Oh, yeah, that's the other, that's just confusing. I
Yeah.
never use that. I think that was written in a time when there might have been a lot of dirt roads in town. There were questions about lot lines, but we're pretty sophisticated now. We require a certified plot plan for any kind of addition. So that's really a vestige of the past that is confusing to people.
Yeah,
Just use a 25-foot front setback from the front property line.
yeah.
let me check something here. Well, the table of dimensional regulations in the 2006 bylaw says ZBA, and so the planning board was substituted, well, is
That's
the,
when the ZBA was a site plan authority. So at some point, the planning board became the site plan authority. So your dimensional requirements in the B district are all set on the site plan. There are no set dimensional requirements
right,
in the B district.
so that, so actually then I don't have to worry about that's just, well,
The 50-foot thing is in the front setback for all the residential zones.
that has to be, that's a zoning amendment. The
That's a zoning amendment, eliminating that language and just sticking to the 25-foot front setback.
But the planning board was just, well,
That's a-
even,
That's a RATA. The planning board is the site plan
right.
approval authority. The table never got changed. Whenever that switch over was,
I still, I'm not clear whether we have to do that as a zoning amendment or not.
at some point, it was voted at town
I
meeting.
understand that, I'm just wondering
So
whether.
nobody ever changed the table, that's all. So all you're doing is, we don't send anybody to site plan, we don't send anybody to ZBA for site plan, it's the planning board.
Right.
Table is wrong.
At one point, Robin said that the errata had to be, part of the, I'm not sure where she stands on this. Do you have a recollection whether this kind of errata? I thought we were gonna try and do the whole bylaw, fix all the errata. And she said that that would have to be a zoning amendment. So I'm not clear as to whether the substitution of the planning board for the ZBA would require a zoning amendment. I mean, it's gonna be a consent agenda.
Right,
You
right.
know, it's, so, I think it's no harm, no foul by putting it in the memorandum. We're doing the 50-foot anyway.
Yep.
So that's clear. And then, these,
There's just some other language in there about the exempt uses. They had the wrong numbers backwards. 1A, 1B. And the site plan, the amended site plan, or,
where is this?
that was one of my other, the errata. Somebody had the numbers mixed up on the, might have been the third or fourth
Oh,
item.
at 10.6 and 10.7,
Yep.
we're taking care of that. So that's, we're redoing the whole site plan review bylaw. And so, this 10.7 those were all bad references, because we had the wrong table of use regulations. So we're taking care of that. I took care of the signage. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, you can't limit First Amendment signage, which
Right.
is political signs, so you can't put any limit on it.
So I took care of that in the special regulation, the 25 feet from, I did everything you said. The only thing I haven't done is the definition. You wanted to amend the definition, and I basically didn't have a rationale for that. If you could,
It's like most of the stuff you find, when you find mistakes in the bylaw, it's really when you're trying to, somebody asks you a zoning question, you're trying to apply it, and you say, oh, this doesn't work. So that's where the gross square footage question came up. What we can do is, we can just go to some other bylaws and see what other people have. That's all you do, is find something that you think fits good for the town, a little more complete. The one we have isn't complete, the one the state has seems like it has some holes in it too, so we'll see if we can put something together that's a little better and submit it for everybody's review.
could you just give me some verbiage, a little more verbiage as to why you want to, for the benefit of the select board, amend the definition of gross floor area residential?
Again, there was a ADU by special permit on Woodland Mead.
Right,
So they came in, and it was pretty big, it seemed like it violated the 900 square foot provision. So it had a enclosed garage, it had a front porch and a back porch, full basement, and it just seemed like, and then he didn't count the hallway, the architect didn't count the hallway, an enclosed hallway, because he said it wasn't heated. And we're arguing over the definition, so that's, at that point, I said, this definition's terrible, because they're building a second house. I mean, clearly, it's huge.
Yeah.
And so I wrote a memo to the zoning board saying, you know, I think I found five other detached accessory structures that the zoning, accessory dwelling units that the zoning board had granted, and they were all small and very compact. And I made a memo to the zoning board saying, well, all the ones you've issued have been pretty small. This thing is massive. Looks like a bungalow, you know, a standalone house, and they granted the relief, but at that point, I just said that's where that memo came from, that the square foot definition really has a lot of holes in it.
So you want the definition to read the area of residential structure used for living space excluding unfinished basement and attic area.
I didn't write one. I just said we need to come up with something.
Oh, well, I can't,
I don't know who put that in. I just said we need to come up with a,
okay, well, I can't recommend anything to be put on the warrant if I don't know what it is. I mean,
well, like I said, we'll do some research, we'll look at some other communities are using and see if we can find something or tweak it that it might fit our needs, that's all.
okay.
But for ADUs going forward, we have to use the state definition.
Oh, right. So I'm just saying, if you want to amend that definition that appears in section 11, just let us know. Because as it stands now, this memorandum to the select board incorporates, I believe, all the information that you provided, Patrick. If you want to double check what you sent and against the
That might have been,
draft-
that might have been Patrick that filled that in, but I never
Okay.
wrote, I just said that I think the definition
Needs to be
some work,
changed.
and maybe Patrick had put something together.
Okay. The only other thing I noticed in the materials that Patrick sent us, and I don't know if you have it in front of you, it's under section 4.1.5. You didn't mention this in your memo, but in that section, the last sentence is deleted. And since you didn't mention it, I didn't mention it, but it says, "No accessory building shall be located closer than 25 feet from any dwelling or main structure on a lot unless both structures conform with regulations
Oh,
relative to
That-
fire
that's-
safety."
That's my note. That's, again, that's a vestige. We didn't have a state building code till 1975, so that is something in the zoning bylaw that the building code addresses, so it's just something,
Redundant.
no, it's something that has no meaning.
It's a placeholder.
That's
So-
all.
so you won't-
It's a hangover from the past before we had a state building code. So the state building code addresses fire separation distances, and so it doesn't mean anything. We don't pay any attention to it, so it's a waste of ink. That's how I put it.
Okay, I can add that to the memo. We'll delete that.
Yeah, it's obsolete.
Okay.
So there is no proximity requirement for ADUs? Separation,
That was
really.
any accessory building.
Yeah.
So ADUs are not considered
So they would have to be fire protected in the event they're
not
really tight.
considered it's not considered two families. We're having this battle.
Yeah,
So the state wants them to be built
yeah,
easily, so, you know, buildings have to be set, 10 feet's the magic number, you
Yeah.
know? Buildings have to be separated by 10 feet. If they're not, then as you get closer, there's fire separation requirements.
right,
They have to be minimum 3 feet from a property line. If they're not,
Yeah.
there's,
yeah,
go
exactly.
from 0 to 3 feet, and the fire separation requirements, you know, window, door openings
Yeah.
are controlled. Closer you get to a lot line, the closer you get to another building. But
Right.
if they're your buildings on your lot, there's really no fire separation. And I don't think the state cares. They don't really want us to treat the ADUs as a second unit with fire separation.
Yeah,
It's kind of weird, but
Yeah, I was reading a number 5 feet, that they would allow them to be apart from each other, principal building and ADU,
Oh,
which is
Wow.
insane.
that's amazing.
Good.
Along the same line, I noticed in your special regulation, the averaging setbacks, no building need to be set back more than the average setback of the building on either side. A vacant lot being counted as though it's occupied by a building setback of 25 feet. So if you have a neighborhood with that preceded the codes and the houses are set back 50 feet, then does that mean an ADU can't go within 50 feet?
No, you use the setback, it's when you're too close to the property line. We just used this on 123 Asbury Street.
Oh, I see, if you had a
Yeah, the
12-foot
union.
setback.
So he
from-
was doing dormers
Oh,
and the house is in the setback. So he had to have a
Yeah.
surveyor shoot the house next door to him on either side.
right.
And his dormer wasn't any closer to the street than the house on either side. So we got to put that dormer in without going to the zoning board of appeals.
So if you had two houses on one house on either
Just
side
meet the current zoning setback.
that are 12 feet off the property line in the front yard
The
setback.
ADU can be 12 feet from the,
Wow, okay.
yeah, so that's the street averaging. It's good for neighborhoods,
Yeah.
again, that we're in. A lot of communities have provisions like that.
Okay.
Okay, so the plan with respect to this memorandum, Rich, take another look at it, make sure it's complete. If you want to add anything to it or delete anything, I'm going to amend the memorandum to delete that last sentence of 4.1.5, which you said is just no longer has any meaning.
Not relevant, yeah.
Okay. So we can vote on that at this memorandum at our next meeting, and we'll get that. So any comments you have with respect, any edits, any more detailed rationale than the one I came up with, please just let me and Mark know, and I can amend this memorandum. And then we'll vote on it at our next meeting, and we'll get that off to the select board, so your edits can be placed on the warrant. I think the map is not, I think that's probably okay, because the map exists. The
Just have to
correct
swap
map
it.
exists. It's just never was put on the website. So other than that, I think we're in good shape on that. So, unless you want to comment on text, section 10.6,
No, it was just errata,
right,
that's all.
okay. Yeah, and we picked up on that. So when we amend when we get the correct table of use regulations up on the town website, those mistakes that you picked up aren't mistakes anymore,
Good.
okay? All right.
You guys done with me?
We're done. Thank you very much for coming and providing us with insight on what we're doing.
No problem. Everybody have a great night.
You too. Stay warm. Okay, next item on the agenda, site plan review. So, what you have in front of you is a draft. The redlining that you see, just ignore. The document itself is not redlined. For some obscure reason, when I made some real quick edits at the last minute, the redlining showed up when it was downloaded, not when I actually was looking at the document. So it's now time for discussion. But the key components of this amended site plan review are the requirement of a pre-application conference so that we can avoid problems before they arise. And then I eliminated in section 10.6.4, projects requiring approval. There was a requirement for any alteration or extension of a non-conforming commercial, industrial, or institutional structure in a residential district, which, I don't know if there are any, but be that as it may, the Zoning Board of Appeals is charged with dealing with pre-existing non-conforming uses in 10.3, I believe. So why that provision was in 10.6 is kind of a mystery to me. It really shouldn't have been in there. So if you look at 10.3, and I think Mark printed it out, under 10.3.3 powers, the zoning board of appeals shall have the power to hear and decide applications to alter a non-conforming use or structure. And it doesn't reference residential, industrial, commercial, or anything else. So, and also, more importantly, section 5 of our bylaw specifically addresses pre-existing non-conforming uses and refers to the zoning board of appeals as making findings with respect to pre-existing non-conforming uses. And I've looked at section 5 before, and I actually, if we had the time, I would like to have addressed this, because it requires the zoning board of appeals to make findings with respect to pre-existing non-conforming uses if they're letting them go forward. But there are no standards for how they should make that finding. What are they basing their decision on? There's nothing in the bylaw that would inform anyone what that was all about. So that was a significant change. And then, other than that, it was just an attempt to sort of pull apart the requirements that were already in the bylaw and just enumerate them more. I mean, there seemed to be in the bylaw 2 or 3 requirements in one paragraph, and I just made them 3 for clarity. So I will let you know that I sent this draft to Emil for his comments, and so his input is reflected in this document. So I now open it up to any discussion.
Do you want to kind of go through page by page, or do you just want to hear random comments?
If you want to go through page by page, I'm happy to do that. That will certainly make things easier. I don't know
But
to.
we could all, we could look at like page 2 and all say, do we have any comments on page 2? You want to do it that way?
Sure, well, we'll start at the beginning. Anybody have any problem with the purposes? We can go section by section, so,
Well, if nobody has a problem with page 1, why don't we just,
okay. Page 2,
so I had a comment under 10.6.3, pre-application conference.
okay,
Second sentence, second line rather, says the applicant shall confer with the planning board. Do we want to be a little more specific about that and say, meet with the planning board during a regularly scheduled meeting? Like, that's what it says in the senior bylaw, rather than just confer, because that seems a
so
bit
do you want me to just use the language that's in the senior housing bylaw?
Yeah, that might make sense.
Okay. I don't know if that language is in the open space and farmland development bylaw as well.
I'm not sure, but I know it's in one of them. It's basically, the gist of it is regularly scheduled meeting.
Yeah.
And then I have a question under 10.6, let's see, it's a new number here. The abbreviated site plan review, the original bylaw had something about,
Where are you? I'm sorry.
I'm on page 2.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Projects eligible for abbreviated site plan review. The original bylaw had an entry up regarding greenhouses.
Right, and we looked at that, and it didn't make any sense, so I took it out.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that everybody was okay with that coming out.
Did you think it made any sense?
I didn't really understand it.
I didn't understand it.
But before we take it out, I don't want to repeat what happened with dwelling unit versus, lot. You
Yeah.
know, somebody,
Okay.
somebody changed that without understanding what the intent was.
Okay,
So
so-
maybe it's unclear, but before we just take it out, we might want to figure out why is it there.
Okay, all right, I will read that. Now, that is 10.
We don't have to resolve it right now, but it might be interesting to figure out where did that come from. I mean, do you-
You're talking about the 10%,
What's that?
the 10% formulas?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, this is what Jonathan is referring to. For purpose of applying this guideline, it's really not a guideline, it's the
Right,
bylaw.
yeah.
When ground floor area includes attached residential floor area or attached commercial greenhouses, the area of the residential or greenhouse portion shall be deducted before applying the 10%.
That makes no sense.
Is
that-
it because
but
greenhouses are
why is it?
agricultural
Yeah, but what are
use?
they after there? Yes, the sentence makes no sense, but what are they trying to manage there is the question. I don't know.
Yeah,
What's the fear?
that's, I thought that we were going to take that out of the,
We did take it out. Jonathan is asking why
did
we
we
took it out. We
Somebody
took it out because it didn't make any sense.
Yes, right, that's what I'm asking.
Above the old florist that used to be down on 1A?
What's that?
Would a florist area constitute a greenhouse?
Again, the puzzle is, how did it get in there to begin with? What problem was it trying to solve? You know, yes, it's a horrible sentence, but, and it's meaningless, but what problem was it trying to solve?
Well, you know, that's the thing. I mean, it's
And you
very,
just want to be careful when you deal with these bylaws that, you know, that you don't
yeah.
do something too hastily. That's all.
I'm looking at
No,
the,
POD thing is a perfect example.
it was in the 2016 bylaw, but what, you know, it's hard to, I understand your question, Jonathan, but it's hard to find the answer to that.
Right, I mean, maybe somebody like Rick Mitchell would know what the heck that means, or I don't know. Who knows? But I don't have a problem getting rid of it, but I'm just being cautious, that's
Yeah.
all.
Well, I get that. I mean, let me see if I can find it. Maybe it's in the 2012 version of which I have. Well, let's go back. I mean, I could
We don't
spend
have to
too much
solve it right
time. Yeah,
now,
yeah.
but it's a puzzle.
It is a puzzle.
Well, because it didn't make any sense to me anyway.
Yes,
I think the concern is that there was a purpose for it.
yeah,
Yeah,
Wouldn't
one
just
time.
arbitrarily put in there, making no sense unless there was a purpose for it, right?
yeah,
So
and
we
what
should
was the
probably
purpose?
Understand that before we remove it.
yeah.
Well,
Agree.
well,
the way it was
The
worded-
problem is to, you know, if it goes back too far in time, we don't have a way of doing that. I mean,
Right.
our bylaws are not in, you know, it's almost impossible to find this stuff. And if all these prior iterations of the bylaw are in the town hall, we can't access them. And I don't know if you have ever gone to the town website and tried to ascertain what happened at town meeting. You search for the warrant, but the appendices are not necessarily attached to the warrant, so you know there was a change to the inclusionary housing bylaw, okay? Do you know how I figured out the language? Because I wanted to double-check what the language was that we changed. I had to listen to the YouTube video from the April 6, 2018 town meeting. So, I mean, these are nice academic exercises, but, you know, we can leave it in and it doesn't make sense.
Point is not to get lost on it, but just maybe we could ask a little
It just
more
seems
broadly.
like, I mean, it just seems like they're trying not to penalize you for the floor area of the attached
Greenhouse.
greenhouse supporting agricultural use,
Yeah.
like it
Right.
might have been
Right.
at Meadowbrook Farm or something like that.
I don't,
With the attached greenhouse
I
that's on
thought,
that property. I think
yeah,
it's just trying
the only
to
thing I could,
make sure it's not including that when
Yes.
you're taking your 10%.
Right.
Yes,
that's
be like
the only way I
more
could
or something.
interpret it, that
It's
they're actually
agricultural
saying
use.
deducting the amount you're going to add.
yeah,
Don't count the greenhouse.
yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
That's the only thing I could
Well, maybe we could.
gather.
You could just
maybe
say
we could
greenhouses
try
don't
and
apply.
reword that
Yeah.
to make
Right.
it make
Yeah.
That'd be a
sense.
simpler way to say it.
Yeah.
It's
Five
exactly what it
words.
means, it just doesn't,
Yeah.
it's not that clear.
Yes, but rather than just deleting it,
Well, if you can come up with language that sort of like fixes that,
Don't apply.
if you wanna take a
Look at it,
stab at it, send it to me and I'll,
Okay.
I'll include it. Okay. Page 3.
Just one quick thing for,
Oh.
going back to 10.63. I would just add 2 sentences. One would say.
10.6.3,
Yes.
we were going to use the language from the senior housing bylaw.
Or confer.
Yes, hold on, that senior housing bylaw, 8.2,
You said it belonged in section 10.3.3. That's where you,
oh, I'm sorry, start over. I'm confused.
For the 10.63, the pre-application conference.
Right.
Yep. I would just add 2 sentences, one saying, the planning board shall be empowered to adopt regulations concerning pre-application conferences. So you might want to have like a 1-page application form or a checklist or something like that. Where I've worked in the past, there was like a nominal fee they had to pay. And then another sentence I would recommend is something along the lines of the contents of that conference shall be non-binding on the applicant and the board. So the board can be really honest with the applicant and say, like, we hate this, and you don't have to worry about that coming
I
back.
think that's what the senior housing says.
Yeah.
Let's
some
see.
language, Yeah.
You'll need to unlock your iPhone first.
Yes.
The non-binding piece, I think, is really key.
Mm.
Yeah, because Tobacco had a pre-application meeting, right? That was
Yes.
they were pretty upset about.
No comment about that. I was before I was on the board, but I watched it.
Yeah.
I would have had some things to say had I been on the board.
I was,
Highlighting the importance of the language of non-binding,
Yes.
whatever.
where is that language?
I picked up a diagram of that layout, went home, looked at a GIS, and I said, oh, I won't repeat the word.
Yeah.
Just look at the GIS like that. Then I watched the pre-conference discussion and
To see that.
Where is that pre-application conference in
Oh, it's
8.2?
buried.
Maybe they went to 8.1.
I don't have it in front of me.
They may have referred you to 8.1, the open space.
It might have, yeah. But it's definitely in there.
Oh,
Yeah.
here it is, it's 8.1.7.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we would want to use all that language in this site plan review.
No, but the term during a regularly scheduled meeting, I think is better than confer.
Yeah,
And then non-binding, I think, is absolutely key. And then you set a checklist of what needs to be submitted in, what you should bring with you in that
Yeah,
conference.
I think you could have a sentence saying the planning board shall be empowered to adopt regulations concerning requirements for pre-application.
I will amend that language, Mark, and
Okay.
run it by you.
Okay.
So are we ready to move to page 3?
Yes.
bullets 4 through 9 supposed to be sub-bullets of 3. Last sentence in 3 says total replacement as such as destroyed building shall require.
I'm sorry, where are you? I didn't hear the
Page
first,
3?
1066?
yep, 1066.
Bullets 4 through 9, are they supposed to be sub-components of 3? Just because of the way that 3 ends?
Like 3A, 3B.
Yeah.
Are you looking, you're looking online? Does it look like this?
Yeah, you see how it says right here?
Notice that.
Total replacement of such a destroyed building shall require.
Oh, I see what you're
But
saying.
it's a semicolon,
Looks,
so it's not a colon. So that's
way it
different, that
ends.
makes it different.
but the way it ends sounds like there's a subsection there. Yeah,
It does, but only because it appears to be a colon, but it's actually a semicolon.
Oh,
it's a semicolon. yeah.
So you don't need to do a subheading, it's,
Okay.
right?
Shall require what then?
Yeah, something got left up.
Yeah, I think Jeff was onto something there.
Something got left out.
Maybe it should be a colon and then there should be a,
all of them,
sub-
yeah, all of them end with a semicolon, is that just
Yeah,
formatting?
so the error is that the semicolon should have been a colon.
yep. And then
And then the others get
A, B, C, or whatever.
indented.
Yep.
Yeah.
There was some words missing, I think.
There's just a word missing.
Yeah.
It shall require site plan review.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Good catch.
And the last sentence in 8 is an and. The last word, or
That's
Just introducing a last item, though.
just telling you the next one's
Semicolons, yeah,
last,
so
yeah.
it's a list.
oh, okay.
And in 9, it should be the table of use regulations, not the table of uses. I just noticed that.
On page 5, it goes, the alphabet's a little screwy there, it goes M, M, O, P, to the N, N, O, P.
But we
And-
skipped a page there.
No, I'm sorry.
Are we ready to move to page 4?
Oh, it should just be an N, not an M. The rest of the numbering's fine. Is page 3 okay?
Oh, yeah, I thought, I didn't see anything.
How about page 4?
Page 4, 2B, middle of the page, location of all existing structures within 50 feet of the property boundaries. That could be confusing to be interpreted as structures within the property boundaries, where really what it means is abutting lots. And the question is where to insert that phrase. So is it location of all existing structures, comma, on abutting lots, comma, within 50 feet of the property boundaries, or something like that, just so that it's not misinterpreted stupidly as structures within the subject lot.
So location of all existing structures on abutting lots within 50 feet of the property boundaries?
With some commas in there so that it's not, abutting lots aren't within 50 feet. Anybody remember the Saturday Night Live skits with the misplaced modifiers?
Mm-hmm.
The tall blonde woman with the red dress strode in with the pink purse or something like that, and the purse is wearing the dress and things like that, misplaced modifiers.
Read it to me the way you want it stated with the punctuation.
This is a thought, but a wordsmith might outvote me. Location of all existing structures, comma, on abutting lots, comma, within 50 feet of the property boundaries. So a wordsmith might outvote that.
I would say no comma, location of all existing structures on abutting lots. Actually,
No comma on the first,
no first comma, on abutting lots.
no comment at all.
But you don't want the lots to be within 50 feet. It's the structures within 50 feet. So you've got two clauses in there that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the problem. So does the woman wear the dress, or does the first wear the dress? So,
You could put on abutting lots after property boundaries, maybe.
On abutting lots,
the end.
location of all existing structures within 50 feet of the property line, property boundaries on abutting lots. Is that,
yeah,
Yeah, then you got the modifiers
that
changed.
skit was called First Draft Theater.
okay. Are we ready to move to page 5?
Yep.
Yep. So on page 5, number 3, detailed landscaping plan depicting existing large trees. Large is often a debated subject.
Oh, mature?
Yeah.
No, but you might just do something, a caliper, trees over X inches or something like that.
12
So
inch,
there's not debated,
12-inch caliper,
something like that.
9-inch,
Yeah.
yeah,
Number.
How would you write that?
9-inch caliper,
9-inch
CALIPER.
IPER.
caliper
they say
trees,
instead of
9-inch caliper trees?
And greater, 9-inch and greater.
And greater,
Depicting trees larger
larger than.
than 9 caliper,
9-inch.
9-inch caliper.
Is it common to measure it that way, that manner?
Yeah.
Different breeds would have different thicknesses, wouldn't they?
No, they just measure the trunk base with a caliper.
You couldn't have a skinny tree that's really, really tall?
Yes, but they measure caliper.
It's a minor thing, but on RQRS, R Mechanical equipment, would you say mechanical and electrical or slash electrical?
Where are we on,
Number R.
oh. Oh,
I'm thinking of new batteries and any kind of electrical piece of equipment.
You could just say building services,
Building services, yeah.
because
Yeah,
could have,
could be other things.
Yeah.
yeah.
Building services equipment.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good.
so what, help me
Cross
here.
out mechanical and say building services equipment.
Okay,
Well, we have the expert here.
I don't know that. Is there, I might be, do we have any sound study, decibel, like the current versus proposed sound? I don't know if there's anything related to acoustic study.
let's see. We said, if applicable, an operational plan that includes the following information. Well, that should be a lowercase b. We might put there something about noise.
Yeah,
Acoustical study,
If applicable.
Well, you wouldn't necessarily want a acoustical study if warranted owing to,
Outdoor uses, or
what's that?
if you had like outdoor uses, like outdoor seating or something like that, or if it was a type of use where you'd expect noise, like a
Log
event-
splitting.
yeah, restaurant perhaps.
You know,
Yeah.
a club, a cabaret,
yeah, I was actually thinking about the previous, building, so you build a building and you put a bunch of loud equipment on the roof.
yeah.
yeah, that's true too, yeah.
You want
Yeah.
a study of the pre and post, like, what's your impact of the project been on?
Do you want to send me some language to that effect? And that would that be like why, on page 5, it would be, we could put it right after X. Why? Probably if applicable, or,
I mean, do you want to list out what it could be? Because you're talking about mechanical equipment, you're talking about operations, you're talking about sports, you're talking about,
Talking about the method
Entertainment.
of construction
yes,
during,
yes. That's a stretch, but yes, it came up.
that does come up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly does come up. And there's some, right, you can't be more than X
Yeah,
add to ambient
at the road, it can't be more than, I think, 10 decibels or something.
greater than, yeah.
Otherwise, you need a,
Maybe we do including but not limited to
you
language.
could say if it exceeds 10 decibels, maybe what the average number of decibels is for a typical road.
Right, but in terms of what you're measuring, it might be includes but not limited to, and then do the list.
so
Yeah.
this would be
Let's say
an
nothing about it,
acoustical,
because there was just a big list that we just rattled off.
Yeah. Could give some
Everything
examples.
From a cabaret to blasting.
Could
Yeah.
give some examples, yeah.
Yeah,
so an acoustical study,
Pre and post, or pre, during and post, I don't know. Pre is your baseline.
Well, that would be two different lines, would it? One would be pre and post, and the other one would be during construction?
yeah, construction time is the worst than,
An acoustical, to analyze the impact of, the construction period,
Yeah.
and then also a monitoring of, or a model of, the impact as it relates to the operation of
yeah.
whatever. But I can try to come up with some language, Mark.
it might have to go in two places.
Yeah.
That would actually be X, because I think Y the last item should be in the legend. But Yeah, send that to me as soon as possible, so it could go,
Thinking so narrowly.
it could go in the operations as well.
Yeah. Provide examples.
Including but not limited to.
Would an acoustical study be included, because we're looking at the section, we're looking at 2R, correct, on page 5? And section 2 refers to a location map. And I'm not well-versed in these areas at all, but would an acoustical study be on the map? Just in terms of placement and where this goes?
It would.
It would be? Okay, cool.
The study would analyze points as it relates to the location of the.
Understood, okay.
Like if a condenser was on a lot line, you'd have a problem.
Got it. Thank you.
Egress door to a cabaret was aiming at an apartment building.
Understood.
I remember there was one comment about photometric data down to a tenth of a foot candle, but it didn't give the intervals. And but they're pretty standard. I mean, it's in the order of 20 feet on center or something like that.
Is that a professional society that has that standard?
Something like that, yeah. So typically, when you see a grid of numbers for the photometric chart, they're at particular intervals that
Do you
standard.
know the organization that would provide that?
I don't, but probably, I mean, I could look at it. I gotta find out what section that was in, but I remember coming across that.
So we're jumping back and forth between 5 and 6, so is 6 on the table now?
Yeah, we're on 6.
Okay, so.
So I think we need to talk about sound in 2 places, though. And I don't know if we can say decibel levels are likely to exceed, you.
Ambient levels at the street level or something.
Yeah, ambient levels, existing ambient levels. Is that too vague?
Is it somewhere
Yeah.
else in the bylaw?
No, there's not one, I've never seen it in a bylaw, and, to the extent that, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I was looking at Middleton's bylaw. I Googled Middleton, and I got Middleton, Wisconsin, which is a fairly big city. So some of this list is from there, not Middleton, and trust me, they didn't consider sound. And actually, it's forward-thinking to think about sound, because there have been studies that show that people who have been exposed to high level of noise over time suffer negative health consequences. It's really, really stressful. And that stress can contribute to, all sorts of health issues. So
Do we have I think we have a bylaw on glare.
we do have, there's
Because
something in our
glare doesn't include just light, it's noise, it's junk in the yard, it's all kinds
I
of,
think we do have something in our
Yeah, because
bylaw on
it's
noise.
called glare, Glare.
It
and I
might be
remember-
in 6. Let's look.
And we do have noise ordinance too, we do have a noise, a fairly recent one.
Well, I was just thinking of floodlights, that's why that ring the bell.
Yeah, that's called glare.
Okay.
Actually, glare is specific to light, though, not junk. And it's relation of differences in lighting levels on adjacent properties is
Yeah.
established as glare.
Rockport, I think, has a pretty good bylaw on
Yeah.
glare.
Yeah.
In the office, we call them prison lights.
Ooh.
No prison lights in the
Yeah.
closet.
I apologize, I have to.
Yeah.
I have a hard stop at 9. Babysitter trying to get home.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See you, Pat.
Pat, if you see anything else in here, just shoot.
I'll continue. I had a couple things I wanted to, I'll shoot you guys an email.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Darcy, is it a general bylaw on noise, I think?
I think it is a general, yeah, and it's not that old.
Right, yeah, we'll look that up.
It was because of dogs barking, but it can apply to anything.
Right, interesting. Okay,
Yes, So we should coordinate them if possible.
Yeah, we can just reference the general bylaw then.
Yep.
Okay, can we move on to page 7 or not?
Page 6, could I go
6,
back?
sure.
Item 5, perspective renderings of the proposed project and/or photos of similar structures may also be submitted, but not in lieu of drawings showing the actual intended appearance of the building. What I would add there is, but not in lieu of accurate scale drawings showing the actual intended appearance of the buildings. I don't think they don't need to be orthographic projection, they just need to be to scale.
Yeah, otherwise you get what we saw on 133 Essex.
In
at
lieu
the
of
At the
accurate-
entrance.
In lieu of accurate scale drawings showing the actual intended appearance, okay.
And that doesn't preclude, like if we said orthographic projection, well, you could do a scale drawing that's isometric or
Yeah.
symmetric or something like that, and that's accurate.
That's actually what UTIL has done on some of their isometrics. They're accurate, but they're not perspectives.
That was it on 6 for me.
7?
7 has a repeat. So the 50 feet from the property, so whatever we came up with for wording on the previous one, just repeat it.
What number?
B.
So B,
Thank you. What are parking stalls?
Parking spaces.
Spaces.
Oh, okay, I've never heard
Yeah.
that before.
It's not usual to
Let's
call
put
it
spaces then.
an antiquated term.
that. Yeah,
Let's put spaces.
where's that?
It's on K.
So jumping ahead but then backwards, the next page talks about. Can you speak into the mic, please? Oh, sorry. On the next page, it talks about snow removal under operations, but the question is, in the list of, elements being shown on the plans, do we want to mention snow shelf? No, any snow shelves? For example, again, on 133 Essex, they were completely absent. There was no place to put snow.
Yeah. There's procedures for snow removal, and
So in other words, you've got the
you could either
operational
remove it
piece.
completely from the site or store it on the site.
Yeah.
So they have to be specific about what they're,
So you've got it covered in one place. It's sort of duplication, but do you
Yeah.
want to add it under elements as well as operations? It's a question.
You could say snow removal procedures in places.
Yeah, you could do that too.
just add language there,
So
procedures,
I cheated and that gets you over to page 8, sorry.
procedures for snow removal or storage.
Yeah,
And I think we'd have to add
so
that.
if we're on page 8,
For storage.
We'd have to go back and make sure that, okay. All right,
we done with 7?
yeah, we're on 8.
Okay, on 8, the letter D, after abbreviate, 10.6.9, site plan review and abbreviated
Oh, yes.
site plan review,
Oh,
just a typo.
So the last line of page 8, I think I would eliminate the ability to waive the requirement to provide an electronic copy of the application. That's very standard these days.
Could you repeat that?
I didn't hear that either.
So the bottom of page 8, there's a sentence that says the planning board could waive the requirement to provide an electronic copy of the application. I would just eliminate the ability to waive that because
Could you give us the section number?
It's the last sentence on the page.
10.610 2.
2, yeah.
Oh, delete unless waived, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and Mark, I didn't fill in the copies, the number of copies or any of those things. So if you look at that and ascertain what you want in terms of copies,
Okay.
because to tell you the truth, I wonder if we're even getting those copies. I think with 133 Essex, copies weren't provided. I mean, I always asked Patrick for hard copies, but I don't think he had 7 hard copies. It would have been very expensive
Yeah.
produce.
Expensive set.
So,
So on this page,
but could I just finish? So, Mark, you could look at this in terms of what you think is appropriate in terms of hard copies versus digital. It may be that, you know, there could be some provision that they just, if someone wants a hard copy, they pay to copy, to make the copy. Because if the planning board has to make a copy on one of those big machines that are in Mary Ellen Feener's office, that's probably expensive in the
Yep.
big scheme of things. I
Yep.
mean, I would think it would cost probably $10 or more to produce just one set of those big drawings, and I could be all wrong on that. That is a total guess. But to have those big sheets of paper and rolls and print them out, how much would that cost? If
if you go
Hundreds.
market rate's hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
It's not really what it costs, but that's what the
Yeah.
market
That's what they charge.
Yeah.
charge.
Yeah, so I mean, there could be some provision for that. The problem is, it's really hard to see on a small digital screen. You really can't see
Yeah.
it. So,
Maybe they could do at least one and then
Yeah.
have
Well-
the digital.
yeah, they can provide the digital, and to the extent people want copies, they pay for them. But, maybe some people wouldn't want to be bothered with the copies. I mean, I have the big roll from 133
Yeah.
Essex. I wonder what I should do with that.
So,
It's in my basement holding up the floor.
I have a question about the footnote 2 at the bottom of the page.
Oh, Office of Disability, we don't have an Office
No,
of
footnote,
Disability.
that's 3.
Oh, sorry.
The request for findings of fact and the checklist will need to be updated to reflect the amendments to section 10.6.
That's because site plan review actually has a request for findings of fact and a checklist. And if you remember, when the fire chief came in and Brian Stein came in, we were reviewing a request for findings of fact and a checklist. It's on our website, our webpage.
Okay.
And Mark, you're on top of this because you sent around a memo like 2 or 3 meetings ago,
Yeah.
saying that you basically can play with any of these applications to get them up to speed, and they don't have to be approved at town meeting or anything like that. They're really administrative, so,
Yes, and our forms are like circa 1989, so they need to be updated.
well, you know, speaking of updating, the planning board regulations for special permits,
Yeah, yeah.
bad. Remember, that was the whole issue in 133 Essex, whether we could even rely on those regulations. And we did. We were told that we could, but they were certainly not, you know, up to date.
On 10.6.9, item 3 and 4, should we remove, should we replace the reference to his as the applicant?
Really? That one, see,
His, her, at their expense, THEIR?
The applicant's expense, I was just,
Oh.
because everywhere else it says the applicant, except for
Yep.
3 and 4.
wow,
Good catch.
good catch.
One other recommendation in that same section, 3, 4, and 5, essentially say when the planning board deems it necessary, but in different ways. Just as a matter of form, maybe we could pick one of the ways and just go with that.
Oh, right.
4 and 5 are the same.
4 and, yeah, maybe change.
When
3 to
deemed
be the same as
necessary.
4 and 5.
Change 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Marty, I have just kind of a global comment on the 2 sections we just went through, 10.6.7 and 10.6.8. Those sections start off by saying, you know, they're basically the minimum requirements for an application. And they start off by saying the planning board can waive any of these items. So I think what you could do, it's totally optional, but like Ipswich does this, there's a sentence that says the planning board shall have the authority to adopt regulations concerning site plans, what is a minimum site plan application. And then you have a separate document that's the site plan regulations. And the only benefit of that is a lot easier to change them. So if you want to make a change, you don't have to go to town meeting and go through, just have a public hearing, and the planning board owns those changes. Because I think these things that we list are pretty non-controversial. And I think, my sense is the town would be willing to kind of give you that authority.
They also use up a lot of space in the bylaw that prevents you from getting to the meat of the matter very quickly. So it would really streamline things, so I favor that.
So you're advocating just putting the contents in regulations?
Yep.
Now, I have a question, though. Now, with our stormwater management bylaw, we had regulations. The regulations were what required the public hearing. So I don't know, I mean, I could see why you would put them in regulations, but we can't just change regulations. We have to have public hearings on regulations.
Yes, you do have to have a public hearing, but it's still easier than town meeting and that whole process of going to the Attorney General and.
Well, you know what, I'll take these edits that we're talking about now, and then I'll send that document to you and let you, you know, see how you want to use that with respect to regulations. Because it's getting late here.
Yeah.
And I, you know, I can't sort that out in this document right now, how that would actually work.
Okay.
I'd have to be at my computer, you know.
Sure.
So, once we get this document in good shape, I'll send it to you, and then we can have 2 versions, one the way it is and one putting it in regulations. But if we do put it in regulations, we've got to develop the regulations. I mean, if we have a bylaw and no regulations, we're nowhere.
Yes.
So we've got time problems here.
We wouldn't be losing these, we'd just be kind of copying them over into another document.
Right,
Yep.
right.
Yep.
But we'd have to have the public hearing on the regulations at the same time as the hearing on the,
We would, I'd have to figure out how that would work, but yeah, we'd have to line it up so as soon as as soon as the changes go into effect, we have a public hearing to adopt the regulations.
right,
Yep.
yeah. So those are logistical issues. So are we on page where? Are we? 9?
Could that first sentence be and/or departments? Could it be any of the above is my point, rather than or?
It probably should be and,
Yeah,
not or, and.
yeah. It's not an option, yeah.
I think I'll take out their comments, shall transmit, transmit their comments, that's okay.
Then 10, 6, 11, item 1, you have the 7 copies there, I'm not sure if you want to remove that or not. Do it.
Yeah, I'm gonna let Mark,
I'll
sort
that.
through the copies and all that. That just will note that.
On number 2, where you've got the and above, the above listed boards and officials instead of or.
Right, I got that. And officials, yeah.
Is there inconsistency, or maybe I misunderstood, between the top line, item 3, it says, transmit their comments in writing to the planning board within 35 days, and then in 10, 6, 11, on item 2, it says, the above listed boards or officials shall transmit their comments in writing within the planning board within 30 days. Are those two separate things, or referenced in the same, they both be 35 or 30? Or is that?
Well, the 30 is for the abbreviated site plan review,
Okay.
and I took this from the existing bylaw. I didn't make it, it wasn't something that,
So maybe their comments are supposed to be abbreviated and take less time. The words are
5 days.
abbreviated. It's abridged and unabridged.
okay, are we almost done? Because we have a number of items on our agenda, and we are past 9 o'clock.
Well, if we do find something after the fact, we can always,
Shoot me an email.
Yeah.
Because we will consider this again on the 21st. So everyone, please study it carefully, because, I know that there are some typos in here. I will get the comments that I have in a document and get that document to Mark so that he can then be the owner of it and make whatever changes he thinks are appropriate with respect to putting some of the required contents in regulations, and also adjust anything with respect to the number of copies or digital this or that. So I think that the standards, those are important to consider. And then, let's see. The hearings and decisions, that's really, all the information on page 10, except for the first paragraph that has 7 in front of it, all of that is from the existing bylaw. So unless anybody has anything more to add here, if you think of anything, get it to me in the next day or so. I will be working on this probably on Thursday, and I want to get it to Mark quickly, and it will become even more clear, as I alluded to, what our deadlines are for getting the memorandum to the select board, for the select board to transmit it back to us, and for us to hold a public hearing. So, any more discussion on this site plan review?
Nope.
So Pat's going to get us some language on noise, but our general bylaw might answer the question. If our general bylaw on noise answers the question, it'll just be a reference to that. I mean, if you're, you know, we might just say you have to demonstrate, instead of talking about an acoustic study, switch it around and say demonstrate compliance with the bylaw. Okay. So, unfortunately, I think our discussion of the form-based code and the comprehensive plan for the downtown might have to await another day. I checked the website today, still no decision from the Supreme Judicial Court on 3A. It's, ironically, it's 3 months to the day, October, November, December. 3 months to the day, so, but no decision. So, Emil, did you want to comment at all on your slide deck?
Sure, I sent some slide deck to Mark this afternoon, and this was to be background information to begin the discussions, but, you know, in consultation with Jonathan on this, we decided to make it a homework assignment for members to give you plenty of time to, since we're not going to deal with this for a couple of meetings, it appears. So I did, or we did a slide deck that is in 3 parts. One is a kind of a better understanding of what a form-based code is, and in terms of what its components are, and then what's the breakdown done on the purpose of trying to understand the process, how does it work, and how much protection does it provide for the town center. The second part is some case studies from different form-based codes that are examples of what it could look like. So when UTIL starts presenting us with graphics and information and text, we will have at least some heads up in terms of what it should look like, and we have something to judge it against. Also, information so that we can all form our own questions about, is this sufficient, is it overkill, is it whatever. So the idea in this is to ask each member to generate questions they have that are particular to what we have to deal with. So the question isn't, do we have a form-based code or not? We're sort of launched in that direction. It's now, how do we deal with the information coming down the pipe from UTIL when they start up after the pause? And the third part is what UTIL has accomplished to date. So we need to evaluate that. I just borrowed information from their slideshows, the latest one being the select board meeting on December 2nd. And as they sort of find their way through this whole process to start to prepare the final documents. So again, the idea here was to kind of lay the groundwork for fuller discussions on the actual content, so we can understand the process a little bit more, and give each one of us a chance to think deeply about what are the critical questions as we see this coming forward that we're going to ask of UTIL. So it'd be good if we can sort of all get in the same mindset about that. Jonathan, you want to say anything?
Yeah, what I would just say is that the case study is helpful to understand how the form-based code is organized and what the framework of the graphics are to help you evaluate an application. But since it's a case study, the specific metrics and measurements and numbers are not applicable to Hamilton, but there would be numbers or, measures that are unique to Hamilton that UTIL would develop and we would
Yeah,
comment on. So it's
right.
important to look at the case study as a framework of information that we would get something similar to that from UTIL, and that's the tool you would have in front of you when an applicant comes before you. And to make sure that you understand, you agree with and understand what the performance standard is that you're looking at. When you look at a graphic, do you understand what that performance standard is, and can you comment on a project accordingly? And is it the right amount of control, or,
Yeah, it might say that the
too much control, is it
front-
too little control?
It might say that the front setback is 25 feet, but it may not be. There's a local calibration that needs to take place that UTIL is working on now. So the numbers are placeholders. They're not to be taken, verbatim, that they are what is proposed, because they're not. They're case studies from a different location, different set of metrics, yeah.
So, an example would be when you look at it, the case study might say, we recommend a particular roof or a particular proportion of dormer or something like that. That's not necessarily what we're doing. But those are examples of things that you can have metrics for, have control over. And so the question is, sort of what's the right amount of specificity for the Hamilton's form-based code when you compare it to what UTIL's produced versus what, other case studies look like? What's the right amount of control?
Yeah, one of the nice features of the form-based is you can make it as tight or as loose as you want. In other words, if you can be relaxed about the whole thing and allow more flexibility in terms of development, or you can really be controlled if there's a very special area that you need to protect more. So those distinctions can be made in the code itself.
So again, what it is it's kind of making sure the board has a common language so that when we look at what UTIL presents to us, we understand what its purpose is, how you would use it, and do we agree with it, and what are our recommendations. So that's what this is preparation for.
So that'll show up in your mailbox when Mark gets a chance to
It's
send
already
it.
been sent.
Oh, was it sent?
It was in 5:30 today.
Okay, thanks. So that must have been a surprise. Oh, no, we're going to have a 30-slide presentation tonight. That's why Pat left early.
And I guess the other thing would be the questions are there to stimulate your sort of critical thinking, but you don't need to limit yourself to the questions that are framed in the slide deck. In other words,
No.
you could have a question that's not even evident in the presentation. It's all fair game, because
Yeah,
now's the
so-
time to sort those things out, not when we've got the information from UTIL in front of us and we're saying,
Yeah,
how do you use this? What's this graphic for?
Yeah, as Marty said at the beginning, that you put something on a piece of paper, now you have something to kick around,
Push against.
discuss.
Something real.
So, okay.
Okay, thank you. We will study it. I know, I know I have questions, and I'm familiar with the form-based code a lot more than some people, but looking at the graphics, it's a different language. And it's like going into a empty room and an architect say there'll be a wall here and it'll look just like that. And you go, really? And so you have to learn to imagine how the town can evolve with those metrics in place, and how they will serve to be guardrails for what happens in the future. So let's go to the remaining items on our agenda. We have the master plan implementation. It's always a topic
Hide
of
behind my
concern.
I did speak to the town manager about it, because I know it's a priority of the town. It's just when I try to go to it, something else pops up. So Joe has volunteered the services of his assistant to help us sort of get it over the finish line. So I'm meeting with Cynthia tomorrow to talk about how to do that, but I apologize. Unfortunately, we have some staffing issues, so I'm hoping we can work those out in the short term, but
We're fully cognizant of the fact that you have to wear
Yeah.
many hats. And that can sometimes not be good.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have too many jobs, you can't do any of them well. And that's just a generalization. But I'm glad that Joe
I asked
has.
Rosie to speak with him about pitching in, because really it's a management issue.
It
We
is.
have all been waiting all this time, and people have put in so much time and effort and money. And
Well,
so I
before you
contacted
came
Rosie.
on board, well, the planning board approved the master plan on August 6th. And on October 22nd, I sent, you started November 15th, right?
It was October 28th.
28th. So before you came on board, I sent a memo to Carolyn Beaulieu, the chair of the select board, and Joe, and said, what's up? Where's the master plan?
Did you
and
get
I
an
said-
answer?
No, I never got a reply. So this is an ongoing issue, and it is,
Yes, it
you're right,
is.
it's a management issue. You can't do everything, all of the time. What was that movie? Everything, everywhere, all at once? And these are jobs for support staff.
Yes, yes.
We expect you at the higher level to fix these bylaws. Okay, so we've got a plan, and on that score. So now we have to look at this schedule, and this is my concern. So when I say, if you have suggestions for site plan review, get them to me so I can get it to Mark. The sooner he has it, the better, because he has so many jobs to do. We don't even know about all his jobs, the Conservation Commission, the this, the that, the other. So we have some really tight deadlines. So this is the proposed meeting schedule, and it's too bad we're not paid because we'd be getting overtime. So January 21st, I'd like to have, everything is in the best shape it can be. I'd like to get the ADU materials to Robin, and also the site plan review materials to Robin, so she can comment. We will have her comments by January 29th, and hopefully, if you will authorize me to work with Mark, we're just going to be the drafting committee, and then we're applicable, Rich Maloney, to get these things so that on January 29th, we have the memorandums for the ADU, well, Section 3, because Section 3 has a lot of amendments. We will have the site plan review, Section 10.6, and then we'll have Rich Maloney's various amendments. So that's a lot of material to get finalized on the 29th, and then when do we have to get, the zoning amendments have to be posted on the 18th for the public hearing, is that correct?
Yes.
So do we have any leeway between January 29th and February 4th?
Yes. The only thing you have to do by the 29th is to tell the select board the articles that are going to be on the warrant. So we're going to have this article affecting this section of the bylaw. We don't have to have the language by the 29th. We just have to know for certain what articles are going to be in front of town meeting. It's the 18th you have to have the language final.
That's when it gets posted.
Yep.
Okay, well, it's still, how many days between the 29th and the
Yeah.
4th?
It's coming.
Not many.
So what we did is add one meeting for January 29th, just to sort of give us a little more time to play with the zone amendments. And you'll see I have excluded new applications from coming in the door, so you don't have to worry about kind of dealing with new applications and dealing with zone amendments. So that's really the biggest change. I think February 25th, this room is not available, so that meeting would have to be virtual. And that potentially, if everything is in good shape, we could cancel that meeting. And I did remove one of your March meetings to sort of make up for the, the intensity of your schedule in the beginning part of the year.
So the 29th is in person here.
Yes,
And the 4th as well.
yes.
Good, okay. So with respect to the site plan application that may or may not be final with respect to that building that's proposed for the Patton Homestead, I would very much like to have a pre-application conference with respect to that. I know it's not in the bylaw, but I'll be candid, my review of that structure, and I've mentioned it, I've discussed it with Emil, is that it, in my humble opinion, it has very little to recommend it, particularly as the Friends of Patton Homestead, their mission is to promote the use of the property by veterans, and I'm puzzled as how veterans are going to access that building, how seating for the veterans in that building will be stored, because there is no evidence that there will be seating. And if these gentlemen and women are elderly, this just doesn't make much sense to me. And plus, the building is not near a parking lot.
It's not.
And it's
not
not
in-
Not handicapped. So, and we won't even mention the aesthetics. So, you know, maybe there's some opportunity to, before any significant money is expended, to try and sort through some of those issues in a very, to use your word, Jonathan, collaborative fashion. So we could maybe do that in March, you know. Okay,
The one challenge with that is, the abutters have been notified, so we have to do something on the 21st. I could tell the recreation director we're not anticipating a decision on that date, but, we'd have to open the public hearing
at what time?
on January 21st.
Unless they waived it, right?
Yes, they could waive it. Yep, I can ask if he's willing to do that.
Would you ask them, you could just say that, you know, that, I'm sure there's no urgency for construction anytime soon.
I would think not, yeah.
If they can waive that, that would be great. Because there's no way of getting a pre-application conference. Okay, any other business?
Not for me.
Do you have anything else for us, Mark?
I don't, no. Only one thing, the Habitat for Humanity, the Affordable Housing Development and Reconstruction, they're doing the second round lottery for that. So that's the last 6 units in that development. That lottery will be in this room on the 21st of January. It's open to the public, if you're interested.
Do you know if the Affordable Housing Trust has had any meetings lately?
Not that I'm aware of, but I've just had an email conversation with some of the home officials, and there's some money available, so they'll have to meet to allocate that funding if they wish to, because it expires in June.
Yeah, you know, I used to be on the Affordable Housing Trust, and when I was chair, we had frequent meetings, and we would have the folks from Habitat for Humanity come in and give us progress reports and, you know, see where things stood. So-
They reached out and they gave me a tour of the site, and very enthusiastic. I'm sure if
Oh,
planning
they're-
board's interested, I could line something up. for it.
They're lovely people, and sometimes they forget to dot the i's and cross
Yeah,
the t's.
yeah.
As I discovered when I first got on the board, when the deed restrictions in perpetuity had never been recorded. Oops. That was all resolved. So we have one last thing to do.
Oh, yes. I make a motion that we adjourn for the evening. Is that the last thing?
Yes.
Second.
Took a chance.
Pat's gone. So Jonathan,
Jonathan Porter, aye.
Emil,
Emil Dahlquist, aye.
is Beth still with us? Do we
Nope.
still have a quorum? I think so.
Yeah,
Darcy
Darcy Dale, aye.
and Marnie Crouch, aye. Oh, boy. This was a